Hello everyone, welcome to Silent Garden Book. The English videos on this channel introduce Vietnamese creative literature and folk literature. If you're interested, please follow the channel and like the video to support me. I hope to bring relaxing moments to everyone. Thank you for visiting the channel. Now, please join us for the short story, Glorious Ashes, by author Nguyễn Ngọc Tư. It was already midnight, and the flames were towering, higher than the treetops of the coconut palms. Sparks and embers scattered wildly whenever the wind lashed at the fire. The bamboo stalks along the walls couldn't withstand the heat, twisting and writhing before bursting apart like firecrackers. This time, the house didn't have a tiled roof, so there was no sound of exploding tiles. The fire burned with an eerie calm. Unlike the straw pile in the front yard, which flared up and vanished in an instant, Tam and Nan's house burned slowly, its glow reaching all the way to the rooftops of Tum Rum village. Are you going to leave little T and her sisters again, just to run over there? I already told you. What's the point of trudging out in the middle of the night? Her husband grumbled, his voice mingling with the rhythmic creaking of the hammock. She pressed the wooden board down hard against the banana fruit, her shoulders aching. The rain would probably come again this evening. The sun-dried bananas wouldn't get enough light and would darken under the gathering clouds. The air was thick with the scent of ripening fruit, heavy like syrup, filling the yard and clinging to her nostrils. Tam must have burned his house down at least 5 times now, she murmured, counting on her fingers, stained black with banana sap. And it's always the same. Why bother watching? No, he wouldn't understand. He had never seen a fire, never known that each one carried its own scent. The acrid smell of burning termite wings, the stench of rotting leaves set alight, the sharp, toxic fumes from the melting plastic tarps and fishing lines that dangled from the roof beams. She could tell which fires had the scent of scorched rats caught in the tiles, which ones reeked of over-roasted ant eggs. She knew which house fires carried the ghost of boiling rice when Nan had just set the pot on the stove before Tam struck his gas lighter to the thatched roof. She could remember each of Nan's house fires, how long they lasted before they collapsed into ashes, and the ashes. They diminished each time, becoming less and less, sometimes not even enough to fill 2 baskets. The first fire had left behind the main house pillars, charred but still standing, and fragments of smoked, shattered roof tiles. That house, relatively sturdy, had been a wedding gift, built from contributions on both sides of the family. Later, as the fires continued, the house was reduced to nothing but scorched earth, because with each rebuilding, Nan and Tam's home grew flimsier and flimsier. Nan had laughed once, telling her, "Tam's just gonna burn it down again anyway, so why bother making it nice? It's not like we're well off." And just last night, what had disappeared into the flames was nothing more than a makeshift hut, barely held together by a few weak wooden stakes. Nothing more. But this one burned the longest, longer than any fire before. I said that as my aching shoulders tensed up again. The banana flattened under my hands, spreading out like an open palm. I could smell my husband's scent lingering on my back, a faint fishy trace in his hair mixed with the dry heat of the sun. Tomorrow, when he leaves, that scent will cling to the hammock for a whole week, tormenting me to no end. I often recounted Tam's fires because my husband never went to see them, not even when the fishing boats returned to shore and he was home. He remained indifferent, as if Nan and her husband had never been our neighbors, never been our friends. Yet, I still felt that he wanted to know what Nan did each time her home turned to ashes. Nan never cries, you know. She stays completely calm. She would sift through the ruins, finding only a few unbroken clay pots, then walk around the village, asking for rice, gathering whatever firewood she could salvage from the yard. Eat first, then continue living. Tam never ate with her. He wasn't hungry. His belly, full of fire, left him satisfied. He would sleep for an entire day afterward, sprawled out anywhere he pleased. Nan never came to our house to ask for rice, but once she asked to buy some nipa palm leaves. I told her, "We're neighbors, why talk about buying and selling? Take them, and if you need more, there are some sesbania trees by the side of the house. Cut them down too." She gathered everything, tying together a shelter just big enough for her and Tam to crawl in and out of. Watching her drag the bundle of leaves away, the leaf tips brushing against the grass, leaving behind a damp streak, I couldn't stop myself from thinking about their inevitable fate. Just another pile of ashes. If I said it out loud, people would call me heartless, a bringer of bad luck. But here, in Tumrum village, who didn't know that Tom was always drunk? And when he was, he would suddenly be overwhelmed with self-pity. Because Nyan was too exhausted to stay up waiting by the door. Because the neighbor's dog barked too loudly, and Tom thought, it's mocking me. Because a tree root stuck out from the ground, tripping him as he walked home. If I could cry, I wouldn't have to burn the house down, Tom once said, his face oddly gentle, almost sheepish. Tam's mother told Nan to just leave him already. If you want to stay single, live with me. If you want to remarry, I'll even throw a feast to celebrate. Nan sighed and said, but if I leave, who's going to build the next house for him to burn? If he burns down the neighbor's house instead, that would be even worse. The old woman let out a weary sigh, the kind a physician might give when standing before a patient beyond saving, after having gently reassured the family that they had done all they could. Since realizing that her husband could sink into despair over something as trivial as a blade of grass, an ill-fated wind, or the cry of a water bird, Nan had learned to set aside the things she deemed essential. That way, when the flames licked at her roof, she only needed to grab a hairpin and slip away from the blaze about to engulf her home. Then she would find a place to sit and watch Tam. But in Tam's eyes, there was only the brilliant fire. There was no Nen. Like most men in this remote village, they stopped truly seeing their wives just a few months, at best, a few years. After marriage, sometimes standing, sometimes kneeling, always keeping a measured distance from the flames, Tam watched them with intoxicated reverence, utterly entranced, until the last wooden beam was reduced to embers. The exhilarated look on his face belonged to someone else, someone who was no longer just the impoverished, broken Tam. At first, the neighbors would rush over to douse the flames and save the house, but then they saw the husband, drunk, standing there in rapture as the fire devoured the thatched roof. And they saw the wife, gazing at him with an intensity of her own. Neither of them looked the least bit devastated. The neighbors grew weary. Let them be, those fools down there. Dirt poor and not even worried about it, but burning their own house for fun. What kind of nonsense is that? I, too, went to the fire like a spectator at a play, a tragic performance of broken souls. Back when little T was still a baby, I would carry her along, letting her sleep in my arms while I stayed until the fire burned itself out. That magnificent light unsettled me for months afterward. I saw myself in Nan, a woman aching to be seen by her husband. Tam Nan, my husband, and I, we were all married the same year. Tam and Nan wed first on the 27th of the second month. I remember because the night before, on the 26th, after attending their wedding feast, my husband, though he wasn't my husband yet, and I stumbled home drunk. The torch in his hands swayed unsteadily along the village path. Then, all of a sudden, he stopped and looked at me, dazed, fevered. That gaze, drunk and ablaze, didn't fade even when he threw the burning torch into the river. The embers hissed out in the dark water. With the same reckless certainty, he pushed me down into a pile of straw, pressed me into the burning heat between his legs. I was 17 that year. It wasn't until 4 months later that I realized I was pregnant. From that night on the straw until the day my belly swelled beyond hiding, he never once sought me out. He hitched a boat out to Gang Hao, joining a fishing crew. Tired of the rice fields, off to play with the sea, he said, as if it were a vow, as if it were an escape. One day, his mother sent a message through the ferry, calling him home immediately. Come back and get married. The girl's belly is big now. He must have needed time to remember who the girl was, to remember that dark night, the drunken haze, the torch sinking beneath the water, and the itch of straw scraping against his thighs. The wedding procession brought the bride in through the back door. I waddled along, round and heavy, my belly pressing against the fabric of my aodai. The only real difference marriage made was that I moved into my husband's house, helping my mother-in-law press bananas to dry and sell to traders. My husband went back to the sea. I anchored myself to him, to Tum Rum, through stories. When the tide was low and he returned home, I would tell him, "The night I gave birth to T, the moon was bright. Lying in the boat on the way to the clinic, I thought I might end up delivering right there on the water. That little one is tough, greedy too." The moment she came out, she was already sucking her fingers. I'm worried about Met. The other day, she nearly blinded herself, mistaking kerosene for eye drops. Nan's second child didn't make it. I went to visit her. She just lay there curled up, her shirt soaked with milk. Tam's been drinking a lot lately. I told and told, pretending it was idle chatter, jumbling one story into the next, as if I were simply saying whatever came to mind. As if I hadn't lain awake every night on that vast empty bed, carefully deciding what to say, what I thought he would most want to hear. They made him want to come home, to listen. A few times, I let myself hope that maybe, just maybe, one of my stories would make him look at me the way he had that night. That gaze, the one that made me hold my breath, made me keep silent even when my bare back sank deep into the straw. Even when he shuddered, collapsed onto my sweat-slicked skin, and gasped, Nan. Nyanai. I didn't cry. I simply brushed the stray straw from my hair, buttoned my shirt, and left. Whenever I craved something sour, I would perch on the starfruit tree, nibbling at the fruit, savoring the heat of that gaze, knowing full well it was never meant for me. But what did it matter? That night, my shadow had filled his eyes completely. That thought kept me from crying, even when my father pinned me down on the wooden divan and beat me with whatever he could grab. My belly pushed up, making it impossible to lie flat against the wood. My head and feet, seesawing at opposite ends, bruised all over. Nan would bring back any wooden post or beam she found, soaking it in the pond, knowing it would come in handy someday. I must have told this detail a dozen times before. The hardest part was keeping my voice steady. Tam still wandered the streets at midnight, slurring curses at the boat that had slipped its mooring and drifted away, at the fireflies, at the straw tangling around his feet. But after this fire, Tam won't burn the house down again. I tried to hide my regret at the thought that from now on, there would be no more house fires to tell stories about. And if there were no more stories, maybe my husband wouldn't come home anymore. Who knows? Scrubbing my scarred hands, I sat there, caught between pain and relief in that midday silence of Tum Rum, so taut, so eerily empty. The only sound was the beating wings of yellow bees, drawn to the syrupy sweetness of ripening bananas. It was the feeling of a kite string snapping under the sharp pull of scissors. And so, to the man wrapped in the cocoon of my final detail, I said, "Nan didn't run out of the fire this time, Anna." I don't know if she was simply too tired, or if she thought that only inside the flames would Tom finally see her. Nguyễn Ngọc Tư is one of the most prominent writers in contemporary Vietnamese literature. Born in 1976 in Ca Mau, the southernmost province of Vietnam, she grew up surrounded by the waterways of the Mekong Delta, a land where culture, people, and nature are deeply rooted in simplicity and authenticity. This essence of rural life has seeped into every page of her writing. Nguyễn Ngọc Tư is known for her unembellished yet evocative prose, infused with the soul of southern Vietnam. Her works often revolve around the lives of humble, ordinary people, especially women, portraying their sorrows, desires, and quiet endurance in a hauntingly profound way. She first gained widespread recognition with her short story collection Endless Fields, Cánh Đồng, 2005, a groundbreaking work that earned her the Vietnam Writers Association Award. Since then, Nguyễn Ngọc Tư has continued to cement her literary legacy through numerous short stories, novels, and essays, including Brilliant Sky, Wild Wind, Khói, trời, lộng, The Season of Wind, chướng, The Island, Dao, and of course, Bright Ashes, cho Re. Her literature is more than just storytelling. It is a deeply humanistic voice that reflects the realities of life with profound empathy for those who live in the margins. Nguyễn Ngọc Tư Bright Ashes, cho Re, portrays the fate of rural southern Vietnamese women through the image of fire, a symbol of both brilliance and destruction. The story reflects the pain, resignation, and helplessness of Nhan and Ho in their broken marriages, while raising profound questions about the true value of love and happiness. It serves as a deeply humanistic commentary on a society where women remain bound by duty and entrenched social prejudices. From a feminist perspective, Nan and Ho represent generations of women shackled by tradition, enduring patriarchal and indifferent husbands, an all too familiar depiction of men in Vietnam's past society. Women have long been confined to traditional roles: sacrifice, endurance, and dependence on men. Today, Vietnamese women are no longer willing to tolerate abusive and domineering husbands. The phenomenon of Vietnamese women marrying foreign men, beyond economic factors, also stems from their disillusionment with Vietnamese men, who are often deemed too terrible, lacking respect, prone to violence, and failing to meet expectations of equality. Unlike Nan and Ho, modern women choose to walk away, to liberate themselves in pursuit of a life they deserve, embodying a powerful feminist spirit of autonomy and self-respect. This concludes the introduction to Glorious Ashes by Nguyễn Ngọc Tư. Thank you all for visiting the Silent Garden Book channel. See you again in another video.